in what was a massive Easter weekend for Oxford United, where we said Oxford needed at least 4 points. We come away with just the 2, with draws against Hull City and Portsmouth at the Castad and Fratton Park. We'll talk about that on this week's episode of Walking the London Road. Of course, Connor and Will with us as per usual. Gentlemen, we'll get into the games, obviously, in a little bit, but I know I certainly enjoyed the long weekend and found it a little bit difficult to get up for work this morning. What about yourselves, Connor?
Yeah, it was good, thanks, mate. We'll get on to the downers of the weekend in due course, I'm sure.
Well, it's you unfortunately couldn't escape work on Bank Holiday Monday, but enjoyed that extra little bit of time off.
Yeah, it was all right. It was nice having everybody else have their time off and come to the cafe and me have to serve them. But other than that, it was good. I was able to go to a football game for the first time in 200 years. So that was also nice. It was a decent weekend, nice weather. And now let's get into why it sucked as well.
Yeah. So, like we said, Oxford walked away with 2 points from a possible 6 and really a required 4. Before we get too far into it, and we're going to discuss the Hull City game first, of course, please remember, folks, to like, comment, and subscribe. Massively helps us out in the algorithm. And with 5 weeks left of the campaign for Oxford United, we could really use that support, as the boys will need our support in the stands to try and keep our championship status. It's been brilliant support all through the season, so we ask you to continue that. You've been fantastic, and we really appreciate all the support you give on the show. Right, that whole game. The only change to the lineups between Friday and Saturday was a certain individual we'll discuss in a minute, but we lined up with Jamie Cummings starting in goal, Sam Long at right back, Mikhail Helik and Kieran Brown as the centre halves, Ruben Ruskin as the left back, Jonas Kollak and Cameron Brannigan as the 2 double pivots, and then Stan Mills, Miles Harris, Jamie Donnelly and Will Lancashire. There's been discussions over the fact that Ruben Ruskin has kind of been out in the cold, and Bloomfield addressed it after the whole game. But Connor, given that we haven't seen an awful lot from Ruben Ruskin, what were your thoughts when the lineup came out and he replaced a Jack Curry, who is out for a little bit with a little knock, and we're going to have to be a little bit careful with that. We'll talk about that in a little bit.
Obviously disappointed that Jack Curry was injured. I think, especially after a 2-week break, a lot of fans were expecting to see him back in the starting lineup. Would have been encouraged to see him even in the matchday squad. But I think that with Ruskin, as you say, because he's been out in the wild, he's been out in the cold. I think that, generally speaking, a lot of fans were behind him and they wanted him to do well. How he played and how the events that transpired, I'm sure that we'll also dig into a little bit. But I think generally, overall, more fans were more encouraging of him and hoping that he would do well, rather than, castigating him aside and not putting full faith in him before we go. But before the game went ahead, but also saying that there is also a left back that we have at the moment who hasn't played in this entire calendar year, I don't believe so. And there was a few times, I think, that game and on Monday where I thought maybe if we had a left back who Matt Bloomfield had ostracised for the past 3 months, it might have come in handy.
Yeah, there was certainly a lot of chat about that in the in Block 19 about, would Greg Lee get beaten like that by Balumi and so on. Will, what was your viewpoint on the selection of Ruskin? Because I was trying to think about it, and the last time I can remember him playing serious minutes was obviously the draw against Coventry after he just signed. I'm struggling to remember any other appearances he's made in an Oxford shirt.
I mean, first of all, like the lineup as a whole, I was pretty pleased with because it seemed like quite an attacking lineup. It wasn't anything like how he sort of set up against Southampton. So it sort of filled me with a bit of hope that he was going to go for it a little bit. With regards to Ruskin, I think I'll just echo what Connor said because I think he hit the nail on the head. I was disappointed to see that Jack Curry wasn't available, but I was sort of cautiously optimistic to see what Ruskin had to offer because we haven't, like you said, we haven't really seen him play much for Oxford United, and yeah, again, I'm just repeating what Connor said. Like, no one was like, Ruskin's playing, that's it, it's over. We were more just sort of cautiously optimistic as to what he had to offer, but still quite disappointed that Jack Curry wasn't available, because he's been such a key player for us and he's been so brilliant for us in defence.
It was rather telling that he didn't start Monday either, given him, bearing in mind he had only 45 minutes.
He was substituted in the at the start of the second half. So and you could tell in the first half it just wasn't working.
I'm a bit worried sorry Sam, I'm a bit worried if we go down and then Jack Curry would go, which, you know, I wouldn't put it past him or past the club to cash in if there's a decent offer and he's our left back. Then that's a lot of work that we'll have to get on down the left hand side. But that's a hypothetical problem.
I mean, you know, it's not been confirmed yet by the club, but Jerome Settler of Ready Oxford is saying that Ruskin has signed permanently as an Oxford United player, so we're not going to be rid of him too quickly. But I thought it was really, really tricky for Ruskin because, like we said, he's been out for a while. I've just checked there. His last game he played was in the loss to Norwich, and this was only his second start since arriving at the club. Out for a long time, and I think we all knew when Ruskin signed that we'd bought a left wing back to play as a standard left back. That usually doesn't go well because left wing backs are, their sitting position is usually at least 10 yards higher up the pitch, and especially if they've been playing in a certain system for the season like Ruskin had. Such a long time out, not a lot of time to bond with your teammates on the pitch. It can be difficult, but one ball over top, Balumi completely does him. And, this is a footballer that Hull fans were raving about after he arrived, and he was their only bright spark last season, but got a long-term injury. Does really well. There was a little bit of chatter in Block 19 about Jamie Cumming. Connor, Will, do we think that Jamie Cumming could have done any better with the Balumi effort?
No, not really. I don't think. I think it's all mainly on Ruskin. Balumi sold him an absolute kipper. I think, and in the defence allowed him to get into that position. But I know what you mean, that in the fact that Jamie Cumming did get a touch of the ball, we could have done better. But it's, I think, the main culprit, unfortunately, for him is Ruskin.
I think I'm also right in saying it took a deflection on its way in, making it even harder for Jamie Cumming. I think I'm right in saying, or might have taken a slight nick on its way. But yeah, like Connor said, it's all on Ruskin. The way he just got drawn in and got completely sucked out of his position. I think it just speaks of his lack of experience, which is what allowed the goal to go in at the end of the day. Sort of when I was watching it sort of reminded me of when we played Hull back in August. If you remember, they scored within about 3 minutes, and that was a pretty good goal. You can see because it went in right at the near post. So I was sort of thinking it was going to be the same as that. But yeah, it's all on Ruskin, unfortunately. And also, you could just see, just a final point, you could see throughout the remainder of the first half, Cameron Brannigan kept running over to Ruskin and trying to give him tips and advice and like, don't go here, don't get sucked into here. So I felt quite sorry for him. You could tell he was quite out of his depth, and I think it just speaks to his lack of experience, unfortunately.
And I will say on Ruben Ruskin, I thought he did slowly get a bit better in that at the latter stage of the first half. Was involved in some touchline battles and did okay, but it's one of those situations where they were doubling up on him, so he had to be brought off. But he wasn't the only half-time substitution. So was Hughes for Hull, because ball attempt through from Jamie Donnelly through to Will Lancashire, who is fouled in the area, and Oxford United are awarded our second home penalty in a row. They're like buses. You wait for one to come along and then two come along in very short succession. It's really clever play between Donnelly and Lancashire. It's what we've been hoping to see since Donnelly came into the club. Obviously, that time after he got that concussion and that shoulder knock against MK, but he's been a bit of a revelation since coming back into the lineup, hasn't he, Connor?
Yeah, he has. I'm a massive fan of Donnelly. I think you can see the extra spark and added creativity that he has, especially playing in the 10. George Ellick on the dub said that Donnelly is just a stratospheric upgrade on when we had Luke Harris. And he's certainly shown that, especially over the past 4 or 5 games, apart from Portsmouth, arguably. I think it's been a joy to watch him when he's on the football pitch, and I'm a lot more confident when he's slotted into that 10 position.
It was very interesting, Joel, watching Will Lancashire, who, like I said, was fouled by Hughes, against his former West Brom colleague Shemi Ajayi. Very interesting duel throughout the 90. But obviously, Brannigan steps up, does what Brannigan does. Good penalty. Phillips goes the right way, but can't get a hand to it, and we are level. And the rest of that first half, I think it's fair to say, after Hull scored, there was a bit of kind of tepidness about us, but we get the penalty at the right time, and the first half changes. In my view, we start to play better with the ball, create a couple of opportunities. Although being Oxford United, we don't convert them, obviously, but it was much, much better. It's funny you mentioned it, Will. I do compare it a little bit to the game earlier in the campaign against Hull, because why it takes us conceding first to then look to try and play actual football, I don't know. But when we do, we're playing some good stuff, some really nice passing moves. Among the back line, there's a brilliant little sequence where I think it comes from Hellick into Brown, and Brown to Brannigan, Brannigan out to the left-hand side to Miles Harris. It's like, I said to the person next to me, on this is looking like an Oxford United side trying to play football, which is, many times what we've talked about is what we want to see from our football club.
Yeah, we were very attacking and very direct, and it was a bit of a breath of fresh air to see that for once. And I think we were quite unlucky almost to not get a second. I think the chance that comes to mind is when Will Lancashire sort of dived for that header.
Yeah.
When you're watching it, when you're there in the East End, it doesn't seem like that bad a miss. And then when you see it back on the highlights, actually like, oh, how has he not put that away? But I won't go into that Will Lancashire rant again. I think I'm not going to pretend that we were all over Hull City, because they also had their opportunities. Carl Joseph had a good opportunity, and it was a pretty good save from Jamie Cumming.
Yeah.
I mean, that first half is the rest of the first half was a bit of a blur, because for me, the main focus is the second half. But I think we held our own against Hull City, who, let's not forget, are obviously the upper half of the table. And we created some really good opportunities because we were direct. We just couldn't put them away. But it was in that second half that we really dominated, and we really should have gone a few goals ahead. Yeah,
100%. Connor, like Will said, we had a mental number of opportunities in that second half. There's one we'll get onto in a minute, but Brannigan has an effort from about 25 yards out. It's really well saved by Phillips, who had a really annoyingly good second half performance. It just felt inevitable that we were going to put the ball in the back of the net and take the 3 points, didn't it?
Yeah, I don't think that Brannigan shot was about 25 yards. I think it was about 35 yards, 35 in 40 yards. Where I sit, where he took the shot, you had a perfect view of the ball just going absolute diagonally, going straight forward, so linear, and taking a little swivel towards the end. And it was an absolutely fantastic save by the whole goalkeeper, who was their number 2, usually. And as soon as he hit it, you thought it was just going to hit the back of the net. But you're right, we had umpteen opportunities to, put the ball in the back of the net. And you thought that at some point it was just coming, because I thought we absolutely dominated Hull in that second half, almost on the verge of bashing them. Because, how we didn't find a way to get through. And that's been the story of our season, just not being able to find a way to stick the ball in the back of the net. And especially over the past 6 or 7 games, where we look like that we're being front-footed and that we're getting ourselves into spaces and to create opportunities. Once again, it's just so frustrating. And if we do go down, ultimately, that's what's going to cost us, not being able to take our opportunities.
Yeah, 100%. Hellick also had a good little battle on set pieces with Phillips. We talked about in the group chat a little bit of maybe overprotecting of goalkeepers, but that's every goalkeeper, I think, in the modern game is overprotected. But the big chance that got Connor to bring up his Sparky slander in the group chat was a brilliant ball across the face of goal from Stan Mills. And I think it takes a little deflection before Mark Harris can get his toe to it and divert it goal, as he just misses it. And at that point, I thought, we're not going to score in this game, because we ended the match with 16 total shots, 5 big chances. One of those convert, which is obviously the penalty, and an XG of 3.3. I think where we just need to kind of sit back and let Connor go on this, on another Sparky rant.
Yeah.
Any other goal? I don't understand why people were defending Mark Harris. Not just because it's Mark Harris. He should have stuck that away. Any other striker in the league, apart from maybe Prelec, is sticking that away. When you want Lancashire anywhere on the pitch at any time, that is exactly it. That's the kind of goals that he's there to score. To be fair to Harris, when he came on, he actually played okay, and he played decently, and he's putting himself about and, influencing key bits within the game, within his cameo. But I turned around and everybody had the exact same reaction in my section. Like, it had to be Mark Harris. Of course it was Mark Harris, because he turned into the greatest striker that the Championship had ever seen for the first 4 games of last season, and everything was just completely gone from him. Even, as I keep saying, even when he's playing for Wales, nothing at the moment seems to go in the back of the net. So that was his golden opportunity. That was his Leicester moment, Mark II, and he wasn't able to take it, unfortunately.
Well, I thought, on a slightly positive note for just a second, the alterating number 10 role of Lancashire and Harris, I thought worked really well. It's a role we've seen Mark Harris in a couple of times under Matt Bloomfield, and it worked really well because Mark Harris is going to run his tail off, and it still gives us a number 9 causing trouble for centre backs. Because I know we both stand in the East End, and when that ball flashed across the face of goal, it's just the wrong side of the post. Potentially, it looks worse from the North Stand, but where we were stood, it was so unbelievably close, wasn't it?
It was unbelievably close. It's going to sound strange, but I actually think Mark Harris did everything he could in that moment. He was full stretch. He can't make his leg get physically longer. Maybe if he'd started running a split second earlier, I don't know. I know it's like, it's Mark Harris. Of course, he's going to miss that, and he has missed some pretty sneaky performances this season. But am I the only one here who thinks that like the hate directed at him for missing that chance is a bit unwarranted, because he literally did everything he could. He got a toe on the end of it. It just so happened that it didn't go in the back of the net. Yeah. But yeah, it was agonizingly close to going in. And the weird thing is that on the Saturday and the Sunday, I kept replaying it in my mind, and I was almost like mourning the limbs that we could have had. I was missing them. The whole stadium, the North Stand, the East Stand, even the South Stand, the Pensioners, they would have been on their feet. The whole stadium would have erupted. And it just wasn't to be. It's so gutting. It's almost worse than like a defeat, because you know how crucial those 3 points are. I can tell Connor's about to go off again, but like, do you understand what I mean? Like, yeah, I mean, I think bad, not even a bad miss. He did everything he could. It just wasn't quite in. But I kept replaying it in my head, just thinking, damn, that would have been so good. That would have been such a good moment for us. Also for Mark Harris, it would have done bits for his confidence. You can tell when he's playing for us, when he's playing for Wales, when he took that penalty against Bosnia, like his confidence is on the floor right now. So it would have been really positive for him. But yeah, anyway, Connor, I'll let you carry on.
No, it's fine. I was going to say I went home and had a shower and did the exact same thing. I stood with my palm on the wall and the water at the back of my neck.
I do agree with we obviously talked about it a lot in the group chat afterwards. I am on Will's side more in saying, if it's Kiefer Moore, if it's a taller striker, they're getting a more firm touch to that ball and it's in the back of the net. Like Will says, maybe Sparky could go at that split second earlier. But, it's that being said, I am getting like flashbacks to multiple chances last season that he had, that Dane Scarlett had, where they just missed, just missed on the goal line. Obviously Bristol City's the one that kind of sticks most memorably in the brain and most painfully.
I think. Wait, sorry, Connor, you want to?
I was going to say that was awful.
Okay. I mean, I was just going to say, like, my thoughts sort of when I left that whole game was that game is, I feel, is sort of embodies how our season's going to end. Sort of like we've given it a really good go. The effort in a lot of the games, not all of them, but in a lot of the games has really been there for the players. The fans have been behind the team and support them really well, but we just don't quite get over the line. We come close. I think we're going to come agonize. I know I'm sort of jumping ahead a bit. I think we're going to get agonizingly close, and we really bring it to the big teams that come to the Kassam, but it just wasn't. Something just didn't click. We just couldn't get that final. Couldn't get the ball in the back of the net. Couldn't get the points on the board. Just couldn't get close enough, basically.
My thought leaving that game was 4 points from 3 games chucked away.
Yeah. Let's talk about that other game then, because obviously a trip down to Fratton Park. We always seem to get them around this time of year. Not always on the Easter weekend, but it's always seems to be around this time of year. We go to Fratton. I think this is obviously going to be the more contentious game, and I'm sure at this point there are going to be some Portsmouth fans joining us to see our breakdown of certain moments. Don't worry, we're going to talk about that, about those bits and pieces. Lineup, as we mentioned, one change to the side that started the whole game. That was, of course, Brody Spencer replacing Ruben Ruskin. And when I was stood outside the Good Companion, chaps, looking at that lineup, I turned to the people around me and gone, that's a strong side. That's might be, obviously, with lacking Jack Curry, lacking Brian de Keersmacher, that might be the strongest lineup that we can deploy at this moment in time.
It was the strongest that we could deploy, and I think that a lot of fans shared your sentiment, Sam, and they thought that it's a strong lineup against the struggling Portsmouth side, and Matt Bloomfield's actually going for it, and hopefully we'll see some nice, quick, fast, direct, attacking football from the start.
Yeah, about that. Will, what were your thoughts on that lineup? Because there was a couple of Portsmouth fans that came to the Good Companion. We were chatting with them, and they were very, very nervous. Like you said, Connor, they obviously picked up a point against Norwich with a Matson own goal after he'd given Norwich the lead. But I think their last game was when they got beat 6-1 by QPR. So this was a fan base whose confidence was at rock bottom, and it felt like this might be the time we break the Fratton curse.
Yeah, which of course means we're never going to break the Fratton curse. When I saw that lineup, I just thought that's the strongest lineup he could put out. It's the same as what you guys have said. I was really relieved to see Spencer replacing Ruskin, and it was basically that second half Hull City lineup, and we played really well in that second half, and we should have won it. We could have got 2 or 3. So I thought brilliant. I thought this is the best lineup that he has available to him. Some people were like, "Oh, where's Jin Woo? Why can't he be given a start?" I thought he's good on the bench for now because we got something that worked against Hull, who are a much better team than Portsmouth, much higher at the table than them. Why can't it work against Portsmouth? I thought brilliant. This is. I was relieved. I thought best lineup he could possibly put on. He's going to go for it, bring it on, and then it went on. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. Stood in the Milton End at Fratton Park. When the players walked out onto the pitch, obviously for both sides, this was always going to be a massive game of football. There's always a little bit of bite between ourselves and Portsmouth just because we've played them so many times. So there's always something about this game, and obviously it was, I think, the featured game on Sky Sports, which immediately put me on edge because it's very, very rare that we win on Sky this season. Portsmouth take the lead inside 10 minutes. Takeshi Anderson, it's so easy. They're playing through us in that first 10, even I'd say first 25 minutes. They're playing through us so easily. And I think it's, a lack of concentration leads to a really, really simple finish for Takeshi Anderson. And at that point, I can't lie, I was thinking this is going to be a long one. Connor, what was you thinking?
Strong words, but I thought that first half was a disgrace.
Yeah.
It was an absolute disgrace. Even when we'll get onto it, but even when we were playing against 10 men, it was so poor. It was timid. It was tepid, whatever it is, whatever you want to call it. It was lackluster. Nobody seemed up for it. It seemed that the fans knew full well, everyone in the stands knew full well what was riding on the line. I'm sure that the players were told what was riding on the line, but they certainly didn't show it. The first maybe 120 seconds, 2 minutes, we looked like we were going to be on the front foot, and then something changed within the game. Whatever we were on, Portsmouth taken twice or three times the dosage. You can tell that Fratton Park crowd really, really played a factor. And it's always said in the media that, that Fortress Fratton or the Fratton Park crowd can really jeer on and jeer up and be intimidating for opposition players. But in this case, it absolutely was. I did say, I did a post on X, which thankfully got a bit of traction, but said each and every single one of those players in a yellow shirt deserved to be playing League One football based on that first half performance, because it was absolutely abysmal. It was embarrassing, frankly. We looked like a team that deserved to get relegated, and that Portsmouth should have been nowhere near the bottom three.
Well, just focusing on that first kind of 20 minutes before one of the big instances of that 90, like I said, it's so easy for Takeshi Anderson to put the ball in the back of the net, isn't it? I watched it back, obviously, at half time, someone's totally legal stream. They got it up on their phone, and I was watching going, who's alive to the danger there, boys? It's almost unforgivably easy for Portsmouth to take the lead.
He's unmarked on the penalty spot, pretty much. How's that possible? Like, who takes responsibility and who's on him, who's watching him? I think it was Konak, or maybe it was Konak who was on him, but he got past him way too easily. It was such an easy goal to concede, and you could talk about the Fratton Park atmosphere. It's a brilliant atmosphere, by the way. I love that stadium. God, I couldn't make it. But also Portsmouth, they just looked like they wanted it more than we did, and they were just fighting fit more than we did. It's almost like they knew what was on the line more than our players did. Call that the atmosphere, call that I don't know what you can call it, but they just fought for it way more than we did, and we were playing diabolically. But the defending was diabolical. It wasn't just that goal where he was unmarked in the box; it was their equaliser, which I know we'll get on to. It was another chance they had in the first half. I can't remember who took it. How do you let that happen in a game of this magnitude? If we concede a goal like that against Arsenal, I'd still be annoyed at the defenders. But this time was against Portsmouth. No disrespect to Portsmouth, but it wasn't a magical goal that you think, oh wow, that was amazing. He was unmarked in the middle of the box within 10 minutes of your biggest game of the season. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I mean, I wasn't watching it live. I think I told you guys I sort of made a little rule for myself. I wasn't going to check the score, and I was then going to watch the replay when I went home. I broke that rule within about 15 minutes. I just couldn't bear not knowing what was happening. And so I'm in the middle of my cafe and I see we're going to go down, and I don't know, I've got the rest of like a 7-hour shift at work. But yeah, especially when I watch the highlights back, I was just like, how the hell have you let that in?
It was unforgivable. Like you say, there's a chance just after a certain incident where I think it's kind of Chaplin. No, it would have been Chaplin because Chaplin went off. I think it was Colby Bishop in that case. Golden opportunity, somehow put it into Rosette of the Fratton end. At that point, when that ball comes across the face goal, I'm thinking we're 2-0 down. This is going to be a long afternoon, which is doubly infuriating from an Oxford point of view because for 75 minutes we had a man advantage. Conor Argive sent off, given a straight red card. We'll talk about, our thoughts in a moment, but at the time it happened, I wasn't too sure what had gone on. Obviously saw Stan Mills in one of our rare bright sparks of that first half, bolt down the left-hand side. Argive makes the challenge, and I'm thinking, what's referee blown for here? What's happened? Watch it back in the moment, and in my personal opinion, I can see why it's a red card, because we have seen time and time again that referees do not like the scissor motion. His left knee goes into the back of Stan Mills' right knee, and his right foot takes out Stan Mills' ankle. So I can 100% see how it's a red card. I saw some Portsmouth fans saying he's got the ball. He's only got the ball after he's taken Stan Mills out. He's in spun on his knee to then get a touch of the ball. But for me, it's a red card. I'm going to be interested to see if it gets appealed and then overturned, because obviously Stan himself had done a scissor challenge on a Bristol Rovers player in our promotion campaign and got a straight red, but that was rescinded because Stan Mills got the ball. Whether this one will be because, there was no, whether the ref saw it as no attempt to play the ball, not sure. It certainly took a long time for him to make the decision. Connor, what was your thought?
Well, Pompey Twitter will be absolutely generational if when they do appeal and it doesn't get rescinded. But I thought that it was a very orange card tackle at the time. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was in the front room with me, old man, and immediately we were shouting red card, because the way that the camera angle was showing it was that Ogilvy went up off the air, studs up. It was high scissor motion, as you say, and that's probably what led to the referee to give it the red card. Because actually on the Sky coverage, there was a replay, so it didn't pan to show Ogilvy receiving the red. So everybody watching it was just as confused as what Ogilvy was feeling. Whatever, guess what? All the Portsmouth players and Portsmouth fans were feeling is they were absolutely infuriated. But I think I don't know. I'm trying to be reflexive upon this, because if that was Ogilvy if that was Stan Mills on Ogilvy and he got sent off, I'm sure we would have been absolutely livid. However, Portsmouth fans, I'm sorry, but we've deserved some luck like that from the officials this season in the EFL. It was just this game that absolutely everything went against you. So, tough shit. We all know that the EFL refs are absolutely honking.
Yeah. So we'll talk about some other decisions in the game, but like I said, for me, the whole thing is on the scissor motion, because referees have shown time and time again they don't like it. If you don't get the ball, you do a scissor motion, you're going to get a red card. What was your thoughts on the challenge when you had watched it back?
I think I'll just echo what you guys said in that, like, he the Portsmouth player, he gives the referee plenty of reasons to give him a red card.
Yeah, like
they're acting as though for it to be a red card offence, he has to like punch him in the balls or something like that. Like the scissor motion, referees don't like it. Like you said, I do also agree with what Connor said in that if that was given against us, I wouldn't be outraged like some Portsmouth fans are, but I would still be pretty angry. But I think you have to admit he gives the referee plenty of scope to give him to send him off, basically, because it isn't a good tackle by any means. People are saying he got the ball. I'm talking complete rubbish. He did not get the ball. I can understand why Portsmouth fans are angry, especially because it's such an important game.
Yeah,
but it's up to the player. He gave the referee all the reasons to send him off. If it happened to us, I would be angry, but I'd also have to accept it that it's a horrendous tackle. Let's be honest.
I'm not having either that it was too early to send him off, or that if you think that's a red card, you obviously don't know football. But yeah, I'm yet to hear a clear explanation as to why it's not a red card and why it's not a dangerous tackle. That includes not just people who are on the internet, which you should never take for granted. That's also people in local media and in national media. I'm yet to hear someone give me a genuine, like, a good reason as to why it wasn't a red card, other than you don't know football. Because according to the I think it's the PGMOL, the rules or the guidelines, like that's a red card incident, unfortunately.
And I just want to echo something you said, Will. if it was one of our players that had done that, I'd be furious, personally at the player, because I go, what are you doing? Why are you making that challenge? I think a lot of the decision does come from the referee's assistant on the near side, because there's a number of bodies in the way, which is why it takes such a significant amount of time. I think there's 4 minutes between when the foul's committed and when Algarve is sent off. Algarve, sorry. Like you say, it's just one of those. But Portsmouth took it as a bit of fuel, because, like you mentioned, they go up the other end, they almost convert a massive chance and make it 2-0. And we're struggling to get into that into half time level. Not level, with a 1-0 deficit intact. There was the occasional opportunity. Like, I think Lancashire has a decent chance, and I think also Donnelly, has a decent effort from a bit of a tight angle. Go on.
No, sorry. I thought the chance you're referring to was Pert Harris. I will just say one thing. Isn't it brilliant being an Oxford fan that when Portsmouth, I think the chance I'm thinking of was when it was cleared off the line, but that might have been an offside anyway. I'll just say one thing. It's great as an Oxford fan that when Portsmouth got a red card, and when I saw on the feed they got a red card, it made me more nervous, because we don't perform well against teams. And also, you just knew that was going to add fuel to the fire for the Portsmouth fans. That was going to get the place really bouncing, which we clearly couldn't deal with at the start. So we definitely weren't going to be able to deal with it then. But yeah, anyway, sorry, Sam, I cut you off.
That's all right. So, second half, 2 substitutions are made. Hideo Teraves replaces Sam Long at right back, and Will Volks replaces Yunus Konak. I thought Konak was a bit unlucky to be substituted, because I thought, he'd had a perfectly okay first half. And off the back of his performances, recently, especially, on Friday against Hull, I thought, he deserved more than 45 minutes. But especially the addition of Hideo Teraves, I think, was a brilliant move from Matt Bloomfield, because obviously it targeted that left back area where they brought on Jordan Williams, who is more I think he's more of a right back. Connor, correct me if I'm wrong. And trying to play a bit like Kieran Trippier, trying to play on his wrong foot, put him under a lot of pressure. And we saw that both Hideo Teraves and Stan Miller had a lot of joy going down that right-hand side in the second half.
Yeah, I was going to say, Hideo Teraves coming on, and then us changing our shape into a back 3/back 5 allowed Stan Mills a lot more space and a lot more freedom and creativity to do what he wanted. And hats off to Matt Bloomfield, because it worked, an absolute treat. So, he covered his own back. He saw what was going wrong and he changed it. And I agree with you that I thought that Konak was a bit unlucky, to come off the pitch. But, it was a good change. It was a good change in system, and it's something that was definitely needed to allow us to be a lot more expressive and direct and fast paced, because I'm sure that there would have been a few choice words in the change room at half time, and it certainly looked it. And we'll get on to his performance, I'm sure, but just especially throughout the second half, Stan Mills' performance was an absolute joy to watch at times. We've shown that a player like him should be nowhere near the bottom 3 of the championship.
Yeah, 100%. We'll also just touch on Volke's performance, because kind of not understated, but just kind of, went about his business. What you want to see, what we've said a couple of times about McDonald, that he did his business. Unfortunately, Konak went off, but, Volks, in that kind of situation, I thought is a good situation to bring him onto the pitch in, because it means that it allows Brannigan, Donnelly to get further forward and pile the pressure on. We're looking to get that equaliser.
He doesn't really get the spotlight enough, Will Vaughs. He's sort of one of those players who just works behind the scenes and does a lot of the hard work to make sure that our other attacking players can really have the impact that they want. You only really notice Vaughs either when he just starts flipping about like he did at Plymouth a few years ago, or when he does his like long throw-ins. But other than that, when he's playing on the pitch, he does a really solid job, but he doesn't get enough praise for it because he's just doing all the work and all the organization, like I said, that allows our attacking players to do what they need to do. I think also another thing on the changes that Bloomfield made, I think it's nice to have a manager who's like willing to act that early on in the game. Because I'm sort of getting flashbacks to Gary Rowett. If we still had Gary Rowett in charge, he would have waited to the 80th minute to make any changes whatsoever. And so for him to bring on 2 players for the second half, I think was a big statement from him. And also back to the whole game, for him to replace Ruskin with Spencer when it clearly wasn't working, I think is another big statement. So I'm quite happy that we've got a manager who's willing to sort of take those gambles and take those risks early rather than just waiting to see it not work for even longer like we had in the Gary Rowett.
And speaking of Brodie Spencer, he opened his Oxford United account. A really good bit of work down the right-hand side, like we said, between Hideo Turvest and Stan Mills. Mills cuts in on his left foot, trying to score the same kind of goal he did at Fleetwood a couple of years ago. And it's well saved by Nicholas Schmid in the Portsmouth goal. But Brodie Spencer manages to sneak in at the back post and knock it home. Definitely the most unlikely of goal scorers to put us back on terms with Portsmouth. And don't worry, Portsmouth fans. Yes, we will come back to Brodie Spencer in a minute. From that point, it felt like a basketball game. Both sides, going back and forth, with periods of dominance in the game, trying to get that goal to restore Portsmouth lead or give us the lead for the first time in the game. And I believe it's before our second goal that Brodie Spencer, so he's initially booked on the 59th minute, and then just 6 minutes later, as I can't remember the name of the Portsmouth player, but they managed to counter-attack. And from Brodie Spencer's point of view, it's one of those unfortunate challenges that he makes that the attacker crosses his path and their legs get in a tangle. But it's the kind of challenge that usually would result in a second yellow card, especially for a player who's been booked so recently. Now, before I ask you both for your views on it, I want to quickly mention that I'm not a fan of the trend that as soon as a player is on a second booking, then the next one that has to be their red card, because I think there is a difference between yellow card offences and and the other kind of fouls that are given away. So I want to make that clear. But Brodie Spencer was incredibly lucky to stay on the pitch. Will, at that moment, it definitely was, when the challenge was made, was a heart in mouth moment.
I think if he got sent off, obviously we would have all been upset. But I think the person we've been most angry at is Brodie Spencer. Because yes, it's unfortunate how he crosses his path, but also that you're on a yellow. You're walking on a tightrope, and the Portsmouth are going to want to try and get you sent off, because if anything, they want to try and get it equal. They want to have it 10 versus 10 rather than 10 versus 11. So I think he was very, very, very lucky. When I was watching it back on the highlights, even then I was like, oh gosh, what's he done? Even though I know that he wasn't sent off anyway. So I can't imagine what it was like in the stands. But yeah, he was incredibly lucky. I can understand why Portsmouth fans are fuming. Then again, I would say that if a Portsmouth player had been sent off in similar circumstances, they would have still had a meltdown on Twitter about it. With the one at 15 minutes. But yeah, he was very lucky. And I think, like I said, if he had got sent off, we would have been annoyed about it, but we would have been really fuming with Brodie Spencer for making such a stupid error in such a critical game when he's just been booked.
Connor? Yeah, it was great content watching Portsmouth fans lose their shit again. Excuse me. Yeah, Brodie Spencer's a very, very lucky chap. When I was watching it with my dad, we said to each other in quite expletive terms, yeah, he's got himself sent off. But how he didn't get sent off was unbelievable to me. And, Matt Bloomfield made the correct decision about 30 seconds later to hook him off the pitch. It has been alleged that Spencer came off and his words were along the lines of, I'm very lucky. How have I not been sent off? And that's paraphrasing there.
Mm-hmm. We were all saying the same thing, Brody, so I'm not surprised, mate. But Bloomfield makes a very wise tactical decision, especially, because the next challenge, even as light as it would be from Brody Spence, would be a second yellow card. Shemi Poheta comes on at left back. And I have to say, when he did, I was thinking, oh no, because we've been here before with Shemi playing as a left wing back. It didn't work, but fair play to him. I thought he did all right when he did come on the pitch. Added an injection of pace down the left-hand side. And again, that back three of Terves, Helican, Brown with Volkshoot ahead of him allowed the attacking players to get forward. Although it would be one of those centre-halves that would get the assist for what we thought would be the winning goal in this game. Mills gives it on to Helic, who shifts the ball onto his left foot, whips the ball to the back post, and Will Lancashire makes up for his missed header against Hull and bullets it into the back of the net for his 10th goal in an Oxford United shirt this campaign. And we were absolutely delirious in the Milton End, thinking, oh my God, for the first times in I can't think how long, we've come from a goal down to win a game of football. Connor, even though you were in the front room with your old man, I can imagine it was the same level of delirium when Lancashire's header went in.
It was, yeah. My mum was getting a bit pissed off about the amount of shouting that was going on in the front room. It was. I think that most people down the street would have known that Oxford scored in the front room. It was pandemonium. I asked my mate who went what the whole game was like. He said that when Spencer scored, his words were the roof came off the away end. But when Lancashire scored, he couldn't, there was generally no words to describe it, as in there were literal bodies flying everywhere. And I'm so gutted that I missed it and I wasn't in there, because that could have been a top 3 experience in being an Oxford fan. It could have been. It was, you see, and we got there and we thought we've actually done it. We're going to hold on now for the next 10, 15 minutes. We're only against 10 men. We're going to sharp shot. We're going to look sharp. And yeah, what happened. But also, great, amazing shithouse celebration by Lancashire, by the way. I love that point so much.
Yeah, and we had a brief chat with him as he was kind of getting on the coach, saying, great goal, unlucky, and just I'm going to be even more gutted than I was when Ben Nelson left or Alex Masters. I'm going to be devastated when Will Lancashire leaves this football club in the summer. I'm not going to say that Lancashire seems to have taken personal issue with your critique on the last podcast, but it was quite funny when he put that in the back of the net. I kind of went to the person next to me, went, who scored? Lancashire, celebrate a little bit more, and then had a little thought in the back of my head. I didn't quite get my phone out, but drop you a message in the group chat.
What a player Will Lancashire. I've never doubted him for a second, honestly. First of all, brilliant goal off my head, and even better celebration. And when I saw that notification come up on my phone, my voice hit new highs in the cafe, trying to stifle my scream and say customers all around me. And when I watched it back, I was delighted. Yeah. I'm just getting depressed just thinking about it because of what could have been. But no, listen, the goal was fantastic. His flying header to put it into the top corner was absolutely brilliant, and the celebration to finish it off was, the cherry on top. And I just thought we had done it. Like you said, I thought the first time in hundreds of years we've come from behind to win a game of football, and of course it's going to be this game, the game that we have to do it.
Yeah,
and it wasn't to be, but the goal was absolutely brilliant. And Will Lancashire is a fantastic player, and I've never had any doubts or complaints about him, and I will never say a bad word about him ever again, because he is brilliant. And yeah.
10 goal contributions for a striker in a struggling championship team is actually a pretty decent return, by the way.
It is if you think last season our top goal scorers were Mark Harris and Greg Lee with 6 each for Lancashire to get 10 on his own. You know, he's been superb.
I really, really hope by some miracle he decides to stay at us, even if we go down. I know the chances are like slim to none. But you can tell how much he loves this football club. So that's sort of like playing in its favour a little bit in my head. Maybe if we stay up, we'll have a better chance of keeping him. But you never know. Tottenham might be in the Championship next season, so he might have to go play for them.
We should start a crowdfund like we did for Jamie Cook.
Yeah. I will say that the social media admin hasn't been helping by having Will Lancashire be the centerpiece of all of the hype videos and stuff like that makes it hurt even more, lads. But unfortunately, it wasn't the winning goal because yet again, a simple ball into our box, no one engages as Andre Dazelle. It's a very smart finish by Dazelle. Good movement. You know, you've got 3 players stood in front of him. I think it was Will Volks, Mikhail Helik, and Kieran Brown. None of them go to engage him and nestles in the back of the net. And at that point, I thought there's much more of a chance that Portsmouth go on and snatch this 3 points than us, to be honest with you, lads.
Yeah, I thought that from that point that Portsmouth would have all the momentum, and I was absolutely livid. The fact that yet again some shite defending, and it comes from the second phase of a set piece. It's an easy ball across from Ali up to Dazelle, and he had all the time in the world. As soon as it came towards him, I knew that it was going in the back of the net. You could just see it happening. And
100%.
Yeah, it was an absolute gut punch.
Will?
Yeah, that sort of defending is going to be what gets us down, and those sorts of points dropped are going to be what sends us down to League One. Because how is he again, like the first goal, like what happened multiple times in this game? How is he unmarked in the centre of the box when there's so many Oxford shirts around him? Like, does nobody pick him up? You have a numerical advantage there. You're playing against 10 men, and he's somehow still unmarked. It's such an easy goal to concede. It's so disappointing. When I saw a notification, I was disappointed. When I watched it back, I was furious. I think I put it in the chat. I watched 4-0 written all over it. They always do vlog on Portsmouth. There, it's even clearer. Like, I don't know how does that go in? But you knew as soon as the ball was coming towards him, it was going to go in the back of the net. It made me glad for a split second I wasn't in that way. It's like, I don't know. Yeah, terrible goal to concede. Yeah.
It would that. It was funny. We were talking to a Portsmouth fan after the game, and he was saying that most other time in the situation they're in, that ball flies into the Milton end. We walk away with 3 points, but it just kind of everything came together for them yesterday. 2 other instances I want to very quickly touch on because I completely forgot they happened, and it will help the fact you two watched it, the highlights, and also watched it live on telly, because there were apparently 2 claims for potential penalties, 1 for each side. The first, Kieran Brown in a bit of a scuffle with Colby Bishop, and nods the ball away, a little tug on the shirt. Bishop goes down. Portsmouth fans were fuming. I didn't see either in that moment. Was it a clear and obvious error from the ref, or did Bishop kind of try and sell it?
No, he made a bit of a meal of it. There was nothing in it.
Mm-hmm.
It must have not even been significant because it wasn't even on the extended highlights. Like,
okay,
it must have been nothing.
So the other one is apparently Takeshi Anderson has later on in the game has had 2 tugs at Brannigan's shirt. The other much more significant. Like I say, I didn't see a single bit of this because in the Milton end, all you're just seeing is a load of bodies. But the Portsmouth fan was saying in the Fratton end that it looked like a clear penalty. What thoughts on that?
I'll be honest, I don't really remember that incident. It was more the incidences between Brannigan and Marlon Pack that I have more of a firm memory of, because they were going at each other, and it was really entertaining to watch.
Well, I'm guessing also it wasn't significant enough to make
It wasn't really
any.
significant enough. It's for the extended highlights. What was significant enough though was when Jamie Cumming came and collected it and took out Port to play in the process. And I know apparently that was a shout for penalty, and that's what I thought you were going to talk about, which I was going to bring up as how ridiculous that is even being considered as a penalty shout. Because I thought that's never a penalty, not in a million years.
Yeah, it's great goalkeeping.
Yeah, exactly. It's great goalkeeping, but for some reason the commentator was like, "Oh, I don't know, should that be a penalty?" No, it shouldn't. Shut up. Like it's a good bit of goalkeeping. He was very brave in that moment.
So just to cap us off of this double match week, we're going to quickly touch on Saturday. You know, these fixtures coming thick and fast back into the campaign. We've got only 5 matches left. We host Watford at the Castad. Excuse me. Watford at the Castad, who last time out got a 1-1 draw against Charlton. From what I could tell, not an awful lot happened in this game, and most of the focus was on a rather worrying head injury to Connor Cody. Connor, Watford have been Watford this evening, haven't they, with managers?
Yeah, they have indeed, but they've had 3 managers. It's been really odd this season. There's been loads of teams across the country who've had 3 managers, and Watford's always going to be one team that you would expect that's going to change their manager at some point during the season. But I anticipate you're going to ask me what can you expect from Watford. Well, I don't think that even Watford's fans can anticipate what's going to come from Watford, because they had a really strong start to the season and it's just fallen off, and they've been really inconsistent in the last 5 or 6 games. I don't really think that they're going to have any push for the playoffs. I think that they're rather beachy. I think that this is a good time to play Watford when they're wobbling a wee bit. But then saying that, you know what this Oxford team is like, playing against teams who should be beachy. I think we played Watford at a similar time last season when they were rather beachy. So I'm hoping that, same performance, the same result can come again. Irakunda on the right-hand side, he's a proper talent, same as Imran Loser in the centre of the park. If I remember from last year, he was an absolute handful when we went to Vicarage Road. So, if they're, and Chakravadze as well on the left-hand side, he is, I don't know how a Premier League team hasn't come in for him yet. So those would be some players to look out for. They performed fairly decently against Charlton at the weekend, but as you say, the main talking points away from that game was a serious head injury that happened. But I think that if we're on our game and the players come back refreshed tomorrow, and it's installed that 5 games to go, 15 points to play for, this is it now. It's now or never. Now that it's business as you were. We have 3 weeks of the season left.
Yeah.
So
they also they've got a little bit of an injury crisis. Is that right? I've seen kind of some Watford fans going they seem to, like you say, they're bit on the beach because they've just got quite a few knocks and stuff.
Yeah, they have a couple, but I really don't think that it's going to make too much of an impact to to them coming here.
Well, as much as, like Connor says, typical Oxford United, we're probably going to do something ridiculous in this game. As far as I'm concerned, the last 5 games are every single one of them is must win.
You have to win unless our, I was going to say adversaries, that's a bit much, unless the teams around us slip up, a bit like how Leicester did, taking a shit with their clothes on, dropping points against Sheffield Wednesday of all teams, which sort of gave me a bit of hope for the rest of the season. But yeah, must win. Every game is a must win, whether it's Watford, whether it's Wrexham is coming out, Derby, final game of the season, Millwall, and I really hope to God they've got their playoff spot confirmed by then, so they've got nothing to play for. Or even better still, if they're already up by then, because that would be great. But yeah, every game is a must win, and it's getting to that point where I'm monitoring who everyone else is playing, because I know that Portsmouth have got Borough coming up, and obviously Middlesbrough. You look at where they are on the table, and you think, well, that should be easy for Middlesbrough, but also Middlesbrough is starting to wobble at the moment. And then you got Leicester who are playing Swansea, who are doing nothing at the moment, but they seem to have a few high-scoring games. I'm sure. I don't mean to interject on Connor's role, because I know he's the EFL guy to ask about this. Pompey's game in hand is coming up, but they're playing Ipswich, so hopefully they lose that, and that's what their advantage struck off. But yeah, anyway, sorry, coming back to Oxford, this game's a must-win. Every game's a must-win. If the atmosphere is as good against Watford as it was against Hull, I can see us doing it, quite frankly. But then again, we're Oxford, so I can see us fluking it as well. But yeah.
That's the concern. Every game is like, we're Oxford United, we're going to throw us away somehow, because it's just in this club's DNA, annoyingly. Yeah, 100% must-win games. I think from what, looking around the rest of our relegation rivals, we've maybe got the easiest of running of the lot, but as I've already said, knowing us, there's a lot of potential banana skins in there. Thank you so much, gentlemen. Thanks so much, viewers, for watching this week's episode of Walking the London Road. Of course, as always, if you haven't already, please like, comment, and subscribe. Massively help us out on the channel and in the algorithm. Follow us all on Twitter at the handles you can see on screen. And we'll see you next week for a review of the Watford game.